In the moment when the warm, golden lights of the Aurora Elite Lounge spilled across the glossy floor like a thin layer of fabricated luxury, something no one expected happened. An ordinary man stepped into the most exclusive space in the entire LAX airport, and that seemingly meaningless arrival quietly pushed the entire system to the brink of collapse. No one knew that in only a few minutes, this place would become the epicenter of a power quake. In the most secluded corner of the lounge, where the lighting was softened to the warmth of beeswax, and where quiet luxury was measured by the soft chime of silver spoons brushing crystal, Elias Warren sat there, still and silent like a shadow. He wore a dark grey blazer with no structured shoulders, a black-fitted t-shirt, dark jeans, and spotless white sneakers that reflected the light. Nothing about his face demanded attention. Calm features, steady eyes, the kind of appearance easily mistaken for any of the hundreds of business travelers passing through each day. But if someone looked closely, if their gaze slid over his left wrist, they would notice the limited edition Laurent Ferrier timepiece, custom-made for him, a watch worth enough to buy an entire luxury car, yet worn with such restraint that those who judged human value by appearances would overlook it completely. To Elias, that was intentional. His quiet presence was not weakness, it was camouflage. He was not a simple first-class passenger. He was the new owner of Aurora Airlines, the anonymous CEO of Orion Capital, the man who had just purchased the entire airline system for a figure that stunned all of Wall Street, $12 billion. But today, in this lavish lounge, he was only the man in the black t-shirt. And that dangerous normalcy allowed him to see everything that had once made Aurora Airlines despised the arrogance of its staff, the subtle culture of discrimination, the contemptuous attitude hidden behind half-hearted smiles. Behind the smooth white marble service counter, Elias observed the two names his internal reports had warned him about: Greg Harmon, 35 years old, hair stiff with gel and a polished but hollow smile, and Linda Rowan, 48 years old, a woman whose brisk steps and sharp heels tapped out the rhythm of her own authoritarianism. Greg bowed to wealthy passengers and looked straight through anyone he deemed insignificant. Linda justified Greg's misconduct with lines like, "That is the policy or for the comfort of priority guests." That afternoon, Elias watched Greg warmly welcome a flushed-faced businessman, dragging a gold-plated Rimowa suitcase, then immediately turn cold toward an elderly couple struggling to find the restroom. Linda stood behind Greg, her gaze sharp as a blade, ready to note down, correct or suppress anyone she felt did not deserve to step inside the Aurora Elite Lounge. Elias felt his stomach tighten, not from anger, but from familiarity. He had seen this type thousands of times, people who misunderstood power, believing their smile and uniform gave them the right to decide someone else's worth. But beneath Elias's quiet exterior, a thought was sharpening, like a knife they did not know they were about to be evaluated, and this test would have no mercy points. Elias took a sip of water, the cold spreading through his chest. He looked out the glass window at Aurora Flight 9, the aircraft he would soon board as it was being fueled. A plan that had taken 6 months of preparation was reaching its pivotal moment. Not because he wanted to dethrone anyone, but because he needed to know whether Aurora Airlines was worth saving. And then the fateful moment sliced through the silence like a blade. The lounge door swung open, and Marilyn Davenport, 58 years old, swept in like a storm wrapped in cashmere. Every step she took carried the authority of someone who believed the world should move aside for her. She wore a cream cashmere scarf and carried the newest Dior book tote, her face lifted so flawlessly that no wrinkle dared remain. Her eyes scanned the room like stage spotlights, then locked onto the private cove, the corner where Elias sat. That stare held no surprise. It carried anger, the kind of anger born when someone dares occupy a territory she believes belongs to her. Elias felt the shift in the air. Greg straightened instantly, and Linda tilted her head with alertness. They did not know what was wrong, but they knew an important guest was displeased. Elias drew a long, quiet breath. He knew this feeling well, the moment right before a rotten system traps itself. He knew what was about to happen would expose the true nature of Aurora Airlines, piece by piece. And while no one in that extravagant room realized it, the wheel of fate had already begun turning. With one look from Marilyn Davenport, the moment of collapse had officially begun. Elias closed his eyes briefly, his lips curving, with a thought that flashed through him like a strike of steel. This time, none of you will have a place to hide. The refined silence of the Aurora Elite Lounge shattered the moment Marilyn Davenport exhaled a breath filled with contempt, the sharp click of her tongue slicing through the air like a thin blade. She stood there, a statue carved from silk and arrogance, her gaze drilling into Elias Warren as if he were a stain on the pristine marble counter. The atmosphere in the lounge dipped, the temperature seeming to drop a few degrees, as Greg Harmon rushed over his sycophantic smile, forming so quickly it twisted his face, while Linda Rowan followed close behind with the expression of someone about to sign an order of punishment. Marilyn did not need many words. One glance was enough for Greg to understand that a problem had just appeared. Elias observed them from afar, his eyes neutral like a still lake, yet inside every small movement was being analyzed with precision. Greg bowed so deeply he almost folded in half his smile, dripping with desperate obedience, while Linda adjusted the nameplate on her chest, her expression shifting into that manufactured authority people like her loved to wear. Marilyn stepped to the counter and slammed her Dior bag down hard enough to make a few passengers jump. She leaned in, lifting her chin as if addressing one of her subordinates. "I want to know," she said, her voice sharp, like velvet-wrapped steel, "why someone like that is sitting in my private area." The words like that hit the floor like a spreading pool of toxic oil. Greg understood immediately. He tilted his head toward Elias, and his eyes switched into that familiar expression of disdain. "I am sorry, Mrs. Davenport," he whispered, quiet but perfectly audible to Elias. "That was our mistake. Let me take care of it right away." He walked toward Elias with the posture of someone preparing to carry out a removal order. Linda walked beside him, her polite smile stretched tight like a drawn string, her eyes ready to tear Elias apart to protect the rights of loyal patrons. Elias placed his glass on the table, his hands relaxed, but his eyes cold. He knew the real test had begun. Greg stopped in front of him, switching to that artificially authoritative tone that power-drunk employees always used when they believed they held the upper hand. Sir Greg did not bother using his name. "I regret to inform you that you are sitting in an area reserved for Platinum Eclipse members. We need you to move to the standard seating section." Elias replied calmly, his voice low and steady, showing not a hint of fear. "I am a first-class passenger. My ticket grants me access to every facility in this lounge." Greg glanced at the ticket, but Elias saw the exact second Greg's mind shut off. Not because the ticket was invalid, but because Elias was not the kind of person Greg expected to see in that seat. Linda slid in her voice, cold and commanding. "This is a matter of guest experience. Certain VIP passengers have specific preferences, and we are responsible for ensuring their comfort." Elias inhaled lightly. "Preferences are not policies," he said, "and comfort is not a justification for discrimination." The air in the room tightened, as if all the oxygen had been sucked out. A few passengers glanced over, others pretended to focus on their laptops, but their ears were alert. Connor, a young engineer sitting nearby, swallowed quietly, sensing this moment would be something he would never forget. Marilyn watched from afar, her lips curving into a victorious smirk before the battle had even begun. "How ridiculous," she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Someone like you sitting there. The world truly is losing its order." The remark made several hearts in the lounge clench with discomfort, but no one dared intervene. Linda stepped forward, her voice lower, but even more dangerous. "If you continue causing disruption, I will call airport security, and you will not be allowed to board your flight today." It was a blatant threat. Greg stood beside her, smiling as if their authority had just been elevated. Elias looked at them, not angry, only disappointed. A deep, cold disappointment, like fresh snow settling over everything. He stood up, his movement smooth but sharp as a blade. Greg barely had time to breathe before Elias delivered 3 words that made their spines go rigid. "I will comply." Greg blinked, confused. Linda's eyes flickered with momentary uncertainty. Elias picked up his wallet and lifted his tablet. "I will leave this seat," he said slowly, "because this is a wrongful order. I want both of you to understand that clearly." He walked out of the private cove and past Marilyn, who stood with her face tilted proudly. She did not look at him, only released a sentence that felt like salt rubbed into the air. Finally, someone who knows their place. Elias did not react, but in his eyes, a small, dangerous spark appeared. He sat down in the worst seat in the lounge, a cold plastic chair beside the loud bar and the restroom. A location Greg had chosen deliberately to emphasize one message: he didn't belong here. But Greg didn't know. Linda didn't know. Marilyn didn't know. In the exact moment they forced Elias to move, their entire fate was sealed. Elias unlocked his phone. No expression, no trembling hands, no anger. Just one short message. Ben, code ground top. In another corner of the airport, Assistant Ben Ortega saw the message and shot to his feet, his heart pounding. Only 3 people at Orion Capital knew that code. It signaled the highest level of crisis. On the 47th floor, inside the glass office of Aurora Airlines, Chairman David Langford was sipping coffee when his phone vibrated. After hearing the first sentence, his face drained of color, and his hand began to shake. Mr. Warren was removed from the lounge. Back in the Aurora Elite Lounge, Elias set his phone down, his gaze calm as he looked toward the private cove where Marilyn was ordering champagne. Greg stood like a little king savoring victory, and Linda was writing something down as if she had just completed an important mission. Elias sat there in silence, but within that silence was the ticking countdown of a storm they had ignited themselves, and it was coming, very, very fast. The minute hand on the wall clock inside the Aurora Elite Lounge slid past 4:01 in the afternoon, and the room looked as if the world were moving in perfect routine. The espresso machine hissed steadily, soft golden lights washed over walnut tables, a few passengers adjusted their documents, while others scrolled through their phones. But beneath that calm surface, peace was nothing more than a thin mask covering an explosion building second by second. Elias Warren sat alone on the plastic chair near the bar, the neon lights casting a pale glow across his face, highlighting an unsettling level of composure. Yet anyone observant enough would realize that this calm was not resignation. It was the silence of a storm waiting for the exact moment to tear the sky apart. His phone vibrated lightly in his palm. A message from Ben made contact. He is on his way. Elias gave the smallest nod, no expression. But inside him, the heavy gears of a vast machine of power had begun to turn. At the check-in counter, Greg Harmon remained completely oblivious. He leaned against the desk, proudly retelling the story of how he handled a disruptive passenger, his tone smug, his grin stretched so wide it became unpleasant, his eyes shining with the thrill of humiliating someone he believed beneath him. He sat in the private cove like he was somebody Greg boasted loudly. I told him to move. End of story. Standing beside him, Linda Rowan held her clipboard, unaware her hand was trembling slightly, not from fear, but from excitement. She had an almost superstitious belief that her power inside this lounge was absolute. She straightened her uniform lips, pressed with satisfaction, then declared, "We have to protect the standards of this lounge. People like Mrs. Davenport are the ones who keep Aurora alive." Marilyn Davenport, sitting at the private cove, she believed she had a natural inheritance to lifted her champagne glass and swirled it as if savoring victory. Her smile contained a strange kind of cruelty, the expression of someone who found balance in life by degrading others. Elias watched them all silent, but assessing every detail. Then his phone vibrated again. A call. Mr. Warren Ben's voice was low but urgent. "I have connected with Chairman Langford." Elias lifted the phone to his ear, and the first sentence he spoke nearly stopped David Langford's heart as the chairman sat in his Aurora Airlines office overlooking the streets of Los Angeles. "David." I was removed from the lounge. A deadly silence followed. In his spacious office, David shot to his feet, his chair sliding back. What, where, who, Greg Harmon, and Linda Rowan. Elias's voice was cold steel without a single tremor. "I want you at the Aurora Elite Lounge. In 25 minutes from now, bring the head of Human Resources, Melissa Cole." If you arrive 1 minute late, Elias looked up at the wall clock, the second hand slicing time like a blade. "You will submit your resignation." He ended the call before David could respond. David Langford froze in place, his heartbeat slamming like someone had struck his chest. 25 minutes, he whispered to himself, yanking open a drawer to grab his car keys. There was only one answer run. Back in the lounge, the air still floated with artificial calm. No one realized a cultural revolution was moving toward them with every tick of the clock. Elias opened his tablet and began typing notes, each line a conclusion, a piece of evidence, a decision. He did not need to record what Greg or Linda had said. Elias's memory was honed like tempered steel, every word still hanging in the air. In the far corner, Connor, the young engineer, watched Elias with growing confusion. The man did not resemble someone who had been humiliated. There was something stable about him, something controlled, as if he already held the entire situation in the palm of his hand. "Something is wrong," Connor whispered. Just when the tension stretched thin enough to snap, the announcement system chimed. "First-class passengers and Platinum Eclipse members, please prepare for boarding Aurora Flight 9. Greg immediately stepped forward, adjusting his tie, and picking up the microphone like a king preparing to lead his court. He announced loudly, "Platinum Eclipse members, please board first passengers," lined up calmly, unaware they were about to witness a historic moment for the airline. Marilyn led the line, her gaze sweeping over Elias as she passed, savoring the chance to wound him one last time. "Economy suits you better," she said coldly. Elias looked at her without responding, but something in his calm stare made Marilyn shiver, the kind of shiver she could not explain. Linda and Greg positioned themselves at the boarding gate, their professional smiles so perfect they appeared counterfeit. They had no idea what was coming. The minute hand touched 4:09. 1 minute left. Elias rose from his seat and stepped into the center of the room. A few people glanced up, puzzled by his movement. And exactly at 4:10, the lounge's glass doors burst open with force. 3 people stepped inside at the same moment, and the silence inside the lounge collapsed like shattered glass. David Langford, chairman of Aurora Airlines, his face flushed and breath unsteady. Melissa Cole, the head of human resources, her expression sharp as a blade. And behind them, 2 senior airport security managers, silver badges catching the light. The entire lounge froze. Greg dropped the boarding pass scanner. Linda's mouth opened, but no sound emerged. Marilyn turned around mid-sip, the smile on her lips turning rigid like plaster. David's eyes scanned the chaotic room. He did not see Elias. Panic hit him. He spun sharply. "Are you looking for me?" David Elias stood right behind him, his voice so calm it felt colder than the air conditioning. David jolted around his face, drained of color. "You, Mr. Warren." And in that moment, the entire Aurora Elite Lounge realized 2 things at the same time. 1, Elias Warren was not the man they thought he was. 2, whatever was about to happen would change everything. Aurora Elite Lounge fell into a silence so absolute it felt as if someone had sealed all the air inside a giant glass box, every gaze locked on the sight of the chairman of Aurora Airlines, standing before Elias like a student who had committed a grave offense. No one breathed deeply, no one dared shift because the room carried the unmistakable sense that they were witnessing a moment that was not merely an airport incident, but the pronouncement of a sentence of power. David Langford swallowed hard, his voice trembling like a string pulled far too tight. "Mr. Warren, I came as soon as I received." Elias stepped forward, his gaze cutting through the chairman with a calmness sharp as a thin blade. "I did not ask you to come quickly," he said slowly, each word heavy as stone. "I asked you to come on time." The clock on the wall had just struck 4, 10 and 45 seconds. David bowed his head, breath unsteady. "Yes, I on time." Elias did not reply. He turned toward the lounge, facing everyone. Greg Harmon stood frozen stiff as a statue carved from pure desperation. Linda Rowan clutched her clipboard so tightly the joints of her fingers had turned white, her mouth open, but producing no sound. At the private cove, Marilyn Davenport slowly set her champagne glass down her hand, trembling despite her attempt to appear superior. Elias walked toward the white stone service counter, the place where everything had begun. His footsteps echoed in cold, even beats, making every person in the lounge hold their breath as if they were listening to a death sentence being delivered, step by step. "Greg Harmon." Elias said his voice, not loud, but carrying enough weight for everyone to hear clearly. Greg jolted, then forced a distorted smile. "Sir, I believe there was a misunderstanding." Silence. Just one word. Short, precise. And that single command hit so hard, Greg's mouth shut instantly, as if someone had pressed a mute button. Elias turned to Melissa Cole standing beside the two security officers. "Ms. Cole, please, present your findings." Melissa opened her tablet, expressionless, merciless. Her voice rang out like hammer strikes, sharp and absolutely objective, based on video and audio retrieved from lounge cameras between 3:30 and 4:13. We have recorded the following. One employee, Greg Harmon, instructed a first-class passenger to leave a legitimately permitted area, not based on policy, but based on favoritism toward a Platinum Eclipse member. Greg's face drained of color. Melissa continued. Two employee Harmon used threatening language, including the phrase, "We can call security," to impose illegitimate authority. Linda stepped back half a pace, but Elias turned his gaze toward her, and she froze instantly. "Thazine thritu." Melissa said, her voice dropping slightly in volume, but increasing in sharpness. Employee Harmon made no attempt to verify the passenger's actual entitlements, and instead relied on judgments based on appearance and personal assumptions. This violates Aurora Airlines' anti-discrimination policy. A murmur from a passenger rippled through the room, then vanished when Linda shot a glare in that direction. But this time, her stare had lost all its power. It shook, weak and hollow. Melissa shifted to Linda. "Regarding Supervisor Linda Rowan, cameras show that you threatened to revoke the passenger's boarding privileges without legitimate cause and applied incorrect rules to favor a regular patron." Linda swallowed her voice, cracking. "I was only following." "You followed nothing," Elias cut in. "You amplified it." Melissa looked at Elias, then delivered the sentence that made the entire room feel as if the floor had tilted beneath them. Conclusion. The actions of both employees constitute a Level 1 severe violation, including discrimination based on prejudice, abuse of authority threats toward a passenger, and undermining the customer experience. The room grew so silent, the ticking of the second hand echoed like a metronome. Elias stared directly at Greg and Linda. "Both of you are terminated effective immediately." Starting now, Greg let out a sound like someone had punched the air out of his lungs. "Mr. Warren, please, I have children. My wife, the mortgage, please." Elias tilted his head slightly, his voice quiet, but ice cold. "You should have thought about your children before deciding to humiliate someone just to please a woman who believes she is a deity." Greg broke down, crying uncontrollably. Linda let out a choked sob but forced herself to swallow it back. At that moment, the sharp click of Marilyn's heels cut through the air. She stepped forward, feigning indignation. "I think everyone is overreacting." This was a minor misunderstanding. No one was harmed. Elias turned his head toward her, his gaze calm, yet carrying something that made Marilyn, a woman accustomed to power for more than 3 decades, falter mid-step. "What is your name?" Elias asked, though he already knew it. Marilyn lifted her chin, trying to regain her aura. "I am Marilyn Davenport, Platinum for 12 years. And I demand." Elias did not let her finish. "Ms. Cole," he said, eyes locked on Marilyn, her record. Melissa opened her tablet. In the past 12 months, she began, Mrs. Davenport has been recorded with 14 violations, 1 verbally abusing a flight attendant, 2 delaying taxi from gate due to refusal to stow luggage, 3 filing a false complaint against a young pilot, 4 intoxicated conduct at Sapphire Lounge, Chicago, 5 discriminatory remarks toward passengers. Each point landed like a hammer strike. Marilyn's face shifted from red to chalk white. "You cannot do this," she screamed, her voice fracturing. I am your most valuable customer." Elias cut her off with the smallest smile, a smile that sent a chill down every spine in the room. "No, you are the most harmful customer." And then he delivered the verdict. "Your Platinum Eclipse status is revoked. 2,000,000 miles are forfeited, and you are permanently banned from all airlines under Orion Capital." A collective gasp shot through the passenger area. Marilyn stumbled backward, her legs trembling so hard she nearly collapsed. "No, my 2,000,000 miles. Those 2,000,000 miles will be transferred to the Air Bridge Relief Fund," Elias said, his voice steady and light. "They will bring aid workers to places in need, a far better purpose than yours." Marilyn's words dissolved into silence. Greg and Linda stood in complete ruin. David Langford stood nearby, pale, as if realizing he was standing beside a nuclear reactor. And in that moment, everyone inside the Aurora Elite Lounge understood one truth. The people who once believed they ruled this place, Greg with his polished smile, Linda with her cold clipboard, Marilyn with her inherited superiority, had only been sitting in seats they did not deserve, enjoying privileges they never understood. And today those seats had been pulled out from under them. No apology could save them. No connection was strong enough to shield them. No scrap of pride remained. The court of power had spoken, and the person reading the verdict was the very man they had underestimated more than anyone else. Elias ended the first wave of the storm with a sentence that plunged the room into absolute stillness. "Privilege is not a luxurious coat. It is a bare mirror. And today I only made you look at yourselves more clearly." The moment the verdict landed, it rang through the lounge like a cold bell. And within the warm golden glow of the Aurora Elite Lounge, everything became stripped bare in a way that was almost terrifying. False power evaporated like smoke. Elegant masks fell without a sound, and 3 people who once believed themselves untouchable now faced the only truth that carried real weight, their own choices. Greg covered his face, breath breaking into short, uneven bursts, his desperate pleas tumbling over each other like a lost child in a crowd. Yet no one felt inclined to reach out anymore. "Mr. Warren, please. I did not mean to. I only wanted to please the VIP guests," he cried, but his tears stirred no sympathy. It sounded like the cry of a man realizing far too late that he had built his life on cheap pride, and now the only home he had left was the emptiness of regret. Linda stood frozen, her face pale like melted wax. She had never imagined she would be the one pulled down. After 20 years in the industry, she believed she understood every unwritten rule of airline hierarchy. Flatter loyal customers, freeze out unfamiliar ones, enforce aggressively to prove supervisory capability. But now, when Elias looked at her, his gaze stripped away every layer of facade she had wrapped around herself throughout her career. Ms. Rowan Elias said, his voice not loud, but filled with ice. "You used your position to force others into unfairness. You decided who deserved respect and who did not. But power is not meant to categorize people. Power exists to serve." Linda shook her head repeatedly, tears sliding down her cheeks, but they made her look weaker, not more sympathetic. I was just following procedures." "No," Elias replied instantly. "You followed prejudice, and you turned prejudice into policy." The air tightened like a string pulled to the point of snapping. Marilyn Davenport watched the scene with a mixture of fear and confusion. For the first time in many years, she could no longer stand above the crowd issuing commands and judgments. She trembled so badly she gripped her champagne glass just to keep steady, but the familiar arrogance she carried had dissipated like cold mist against a window. "Mr. Warren," she tried to speak with her usual elegance, but her voice shook like a dry leaf. "I have influence. I can file a complaint. I can bring this to the council," Mrs. Davenport Elias said, taking a step that made the air itself tighten. "You are no longer in a position to threaten anyone." "But I have contributed to this airline for more than 10 years by insulting employees, delaying flights because you refuse to stow your luggage, and making travel miserable for other passengers." Elias tilted his head slightly. "If that is what you call contribution, then the company has been far too patient." Marilyn stepped back, her face draining of all color. In that moment, the woman who had always shined under first-class lights looked like someone standing on the edge of a deep cliff with no idea how to step away. The passengers watched in suffocating silence. Some had seen similar scenes before, employees being scolded, loyal customers abusing their status, and now they observed this moment as if witnessing justice speak for the first time in a place long pressed down by arrogance. Elias turned to Melissa Cole. "Continue." Melissa scanned her documents. "Under emergency termination protocol, we will revoke the employee badges of Greg Harmon and Linda Rowan immediately. Their system access accounts will be locked in 5 minutes. 2 security officers will escort them out of the secure area. Their personal belongings will be returned through the Human Resources Protection Desk." Greg let out a loud sob that startled several people. He tried to lunge toward Elias, but the officers stepped in immediately. "I beg you," Greg gasped. "I just wanted to keep my job." Elias looked at him with eyes that held no anger, only truth. Keeping a job by stepping on others is not work. It is cruelty. Linda collapsed onto a seat, clutching her head. 18 years, is it really ending like this? You should have considered that the first time you used your position to threaten someone innocent. Melissa's voice carried no pity. It was cold but fair. A young passenger, Connor stared at Elias with wide eyes. He had never seen someone dismantle a broken system with nothing but absolute calm. Marilyn clung to her last shred of pride. "I have been platinum for 12 years. I have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars with this airline. No one can buy the right to look down on others," Elias replied. "No one." Then his voice dropped lower, each word heavy like a vow. "And today you learned that." Melissa continued. "Mrs. Davenport's membership account will be locked immediately. 2 million reward miles will be revoked. The system will note that she is permanently banned from all airlines under Orion Capital." No, Marilyn's voice cracked her hand, flailing as if trying to cling to something slipping away. "My 2 million miles, I spent a lifetime earning them." Elias did not blink. "They will be transferred to Air Bridge Relief. They need them more than you do." For a breathless moment, the entire lounge fell into silence. Not a heavy silence, but a cold tide that washed away every remnant of false power. Elias looked at all 3 of them, Greg, Linda, Marilyn. One consumed by arrogance, one blinded by hollow authority, one corroded by privilege, and then he spoke a final sentence, not to punish them, but to restore the core of the system they had twisted. "None of you are being punished for mistakes. You are being punished for choices. And choice is the truest reflection of who a person is." His words sliced through the room like a beam of light, cutting through a suffocating fog of conceit. The verdict had been read. No gavel needed. No courtroom required. Only the truth. And this time, The truth stood with the man they had underestimated more than anyone else. Greg Harmon staggered forward like a man dragged out of the best dream of his life and thrown straight onto frozen ground, his eyes red, unsure whether from shame, fear, or the realization that his entire world had collapsed in a matter of minutes. Beside him, Linda Rowan walked pale and hollow, gripping the clipboard she had treated like a royal scepter, for years now nothing more than a useless piece of wood. The two security officers didn't touch them, yet their presence felt like invisible hands pushing them forward, forcing them down the long internal corridor of Aurora Airlines, while stunned employees lining the hallway watched in heavy silence. The large metal door of the employee exit opened with a sharp mechanical click, revealing a service corridor connected to storage areas, supply rooms, and staff restrooms. A place Greg and Linda had walked through thousands of times with confident strides, now transformed into a humiliating gauntlet they were forced to cross. Cargo handlers, cleaners, and catering staff paused to look at them, silent and expressionless. No mockery, no pity, only witnessing. Because everyone understood today was not just about Greg and Linda. Today was the day the culture of Aurora Airlines had been exposed. Greg pressed his lips together, lowering his head to avoid the stares. He once believed he was the uncrowned king of the lounge, the one who decided who entered, who was expelled, who deserved a smile, and who deserved contempt. Now all he wished was to disappear, to slip into the crack between two floor tiles. Linda walked slowly each step, as heavy as if she were dragging 18 years of her career behind her. She had written termination reports for dozens of employees, sometimes over small mistakes, like arriving a few minutes late. She had repeated the same sentence for years. This company does not tolerate weakness. And now she was living proof of that sentence, but in a way far harsher than she had ever imagined. Greg suddenly stopped leaning against the wall, as if his legs were about to give out. I cannot do this." Linda turned to him, her eyes filled with confusion and deep humiliation. "Just go, Greg, let it be over." But Greg shook his head, his voice low, thin, and broken, like the whisper of a man whose soul had been knocked loose. "Everything I lost, everything, my house, my kids." Linda clenched her hands, the sharp pain in her joints, reminding her that life has no mercy for those who step outside the line of decency. "I am tired," she whispered, her voice cracking like glass hitting tile. "My whole life, I believed I was upholding standards, but I was only holding up arrogance for others." One of the security officers spoke, his voice entirely neutral. "Both of you, please keep moving. We need to collect your access badges." They walked again, legs dragging like they were shackled. When they reached the Human Resources security desk, Linda saw something that nearly made her collapse again. The security guard on duty was the same man she had scolded mercilessly once because he forgot to greet her on a rushed morning. He looked at her now without emotion, without satisfaction, without comfort. He simply extended his hand. "Your badge." Linda's fingers trembled as she unclipped the badge from her lanyard, feeling as if she were peeling away her entire life. Greg handed his over, but his hand shook so violently that the guard had to grab the card before it hit the floor. A small click echoed as both badges were deactivated and dropped into the metal collection box, the sound tiny and ordinary. But to Greg and Linda, it was the slam of a door shutting forever on their old lives. "You have 5 minutes to collect your personal belongings," one officer said. "You will be escorted out afterward." They went into the locker room. Linda opened her locker, finding only a few old papers, a dark blue Aurora mug, a photo of her cat, and a half-opened bag of almonds. Each small object suddenly felt like evidence of a life built on the wrong foundation. When they finally left the staff building, they did not exit through the main doors, but through the loading dock where jet fuel hung in the air, and the roar of cargo carts drowned out nearly every other sound. Greg shielded his eyes from the harsh sunlight. A black Cadillac Escalade waited for them, the driver in a tailored suit standing beside it, with a perfectly unreadable expression. Greg frowned in confusion, and Linda instinctively stepped back. What is this?" Greg asked. The driver bowed his head lightly. "Mr. Warren sent the car. He said this is the final ride Aurora will cover for you." Linda let out a sharp breath, terror flickering in her eyes. She understood immediately. This was not kindness. It was precision, a painful lesson wrapped in luxury. They stepped into the car, compelled by the sense that refusing would change nothing. The door closed, sealing them into a silence thicker than the leather seats around them. Greg inhaled shakily, clinging to a fragile thread of hope. Maybe he just wants us to get home safely." Linda opened the bag the driver had placed next to her. Inside was a white envelope with the Orion Capital logo. Her hands trembled as she tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of premium paper. She read it aloud, her voice strangled. "Greg Harmon and Linda Rowan. This is the last moment either of you will sit in a space designed for premium guests. Savor the comfort you tried to protect by stepping on others. The ride is fully paid. However, the invoice of $4,500 equivalent to private business class ground service will be sent to your home addresses and deducted from your final compensation." Greg's mouth fell open, a choked sob punching out of him. Linda dropped the envelope onto the floor. Neither could speak. Not from anger, but from the truth settling in. This was not just punishment. This was the first time they were being forced to feel the pain they had so often caused others. The car rolled out of the airport, leaving behind two former gatekeepers, who once stood above everyone else, now reduced to nothing more than two silent shadows, drifting through a vast city where privilege no longer protected them, and where arrogance had finally bowed to justice. The glass doors of the Aurora Elite Lounge slid shut behind Marilyn Davenport with a soft click that sounded like the shattering of a luxurious dream. She now stood in the public area of the airport, where harsh white lights exposed gum-stained floors, repetitive announcements droned overhead, and crowds moved like chaotic tides. This was not her world. This was not a place she ever believed she would have to stand in. And for that reason, the fall hurt 1,000 times more. Marilyn yanked her husband Robert's arm, as if he were an assistant, rather than the man who had been by her side for 30 years. "Call the lawyer," she barked. "Call Charles right now. I will sue. I will sue that pathetic airline until it collapses. No one has the right to treat me like this. No one." Robert stopped in the middle of the rushing crowd, his eyes tired and bitter. "Caroline, you do not understand," he said, his voice low and trembling like a string that had been stretched too tight for too long. "Everyone was filming. You were recorded." Marilyn spun around, fury blazing in her eyes. "So what, I did nothing wrong? I simply asked for my seat. You called people trash." Robert replied, each word dropping like a stone. "You threatened them. You insulted them. And that man is the CEO of the entire corporation." Marilyn let out a brittle laugh, thin and breathless, like someone who had climbed too fast up a steep hill. You are taking his side now. That man is just a Robert. Cut her off." And for the first time in many years, his voice no longer shook. It was firm, solid. "There is no side, Marilyn. Only the truth. And the truth is, you crossed the line a long time ago." Marilyn froze, staring at the man who had stood beside her. Through every gala, every charity dinner, every red carpet event, now looking at her, with a disappointment so deep she could not reach it. "You think I am wrong?" she whispered, her voice fraying like a thread about to snap. "No," Robert said, quietly. "You are not just wrong. You are toxic." From that moment forward, Marilyn said nothing. She walked fast, as if trying to outrun the harsh white light, exposing who she really was. She went straight to the British Aurora check-in counter, believing they would roll out a red carpet for her, as always. 2 first-class tickets to London, the earliest flight. Her voice was tight and commanding. The agent typed in her name. The smile on her face dimmed slightly, then a little more, then vanished entirely. "One moment, please, ma'am," she said, picking up the phone. Marilyn frowned. "What is your problem? I am in a hurry." A supervisor arrived, reviewed the screen, then looked up. "Mrs. Davenport, we cannot sell you a ticket." Marilyn's eyes widened, her voice shooting up in pitch. "Why not? This is British Aurora. I am banned only from the basic Aurora Airlines. That has nothing to do with this." The supervisor shook his head, calm but firm. "Aurora Airlines is our primary partner in the Global Connect Alliance. When a carrier issues a permanent ban for dangerous behavior, all partner airlines must enforce the same policy. Your profile has been flagged at red level. We cannot serve you." "Red level," Marilyn choked. "Me, a loyal passenger for more than 10 years, 2 million miles." The supervisor spoke like reciting a cold regulation. "Your discriminatory conduct was assessed as a severe violation. All records were shared. I am very sorry, Mrs. Davenport. You are not permitted to travel with any airline in the alliance." A chill ran down Marilyn's spine. She backed away, mouth open with no words coming out. Robert placed a gentle hand on her arm, but she jerked away as if burned. Impossible, impossible. She rushed to American Aurora, then to United Aurora, then to a smaller regional airline. Each one repeated the same line. "We are sorry, ma'am, we cannot serve you." Each apology felt like a blade, cutting away pieces of the privileged life she had built like armor around herself. Finally, in a panic, she ran to the Amex Centurion Lounge, the brand she believed was as untouchable as she once thought herself to be. "I want to enter," she almost gasped, thrusting her platinum card at the staff member. The employee looked at the card, then the screen. His eyes softened, not in pity, but in the resigned way of someone who had seen many people break when their world of privilege suddenly collapsed. "Mrs. Davenport, your account is temporarily locked due to an ethics violation investigation related to your airline partner. I cannot let you in." "No," Marilyn screamed. "You have no right. I am platinum. I am—" "You are nothing now," Robert said, his voice exhausted. "Caroline, we should go." Those 3 words, "nothing now," shattered a glass wall inside her mind. She, who once viewed employees as tools and loungers, as her personal kingdom, now found herself sinking into a cold, hard plastic chair in the public waiting area, surrounded by the smell of melted cheese from a fast food stall and the sharp cries of restless children. Her hands shook as she tried to search for a flight on a budget airline, any airline, but her fingers trembled so violently the screen kept slipping away. Robert placed a hand on her shoulder, And this time she didn't push him off. She simply sat there, small, lost, exposed in a way she had never been. Around her, travelers walked past without recognizing her, without knowing who she once believed she was. They saw only a woman sitting alone, shaking in a crowded airport, a place far too ordinary, far too unfamiliar for someone who had spent her life in velvet-lined spaces. In that moment, every privilege she had ever clung to dissolved into the air like smoke. She was not shouted at. She was not handcuffed. She was not publicly humiliated. But for someone like Marilyn Davenport, losing privilege was the most brutal punishment of all. And this was only the beginning. Aurora Flight 9 had just lifted off the runway, the engines humming softly as the aircraft settled into its cruising altitude. But inside the cabin, another kind of storm was unfolding, one not driven by shouting authority or decisions, but by the speed of the internet and millions of eyes ready to judge every detail. Alex Shu, the young tech blogger with messy hair and a laptop practically glued to his backpack, sat in seat 3C, and his mind was racing so fast it nearly smoked. He opened the video file he had captured inside the Aurora Elite Lounge, his hands trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the awareness that he was holding a true information bomb. Alex replayed the moment Elias Warren stood at the center of the lounge, golden light illuminating his calm, commanding face, like a general preparing to deliver a verdict. Then the footage of Greg begging for forgiveness. Linda pale as wax and Marilyn Davenport, the woman who once treated the lounge as her private kingdom, collapsing into utter disgrace. Everything was there, and the video was so crisp it almost carried the emotion within it. Alex adjusted the audio cut, the shaky first seconds, and added subtitles so viewers would catch every word. "If I do not post this," he muttered, "it would be a crime against the internet." He opened his laptop, logged into his popular tech blog, TechEye Journal, and started a new post. The title: "I just witnessed a CEO undercover destroying the toxic culture of his own airline, and it is the greatest moment of the year." He typed like a man possessed, adrenaline pumping with every sentence. He summarized everything from the start, leaving nothing out from the moment Elias was kicked out of the private cove, to Linda's threat to call security, to Marilyn's infamous line. Finally, someone takes out the trash. Then came the climax. This is Elias Warren. He is the chairman of Orion Capital. He owns the airline. Alex uploaded the clip right at the top, so anyone opening the article would immediately see the moment that shook the entire lounge. When he hit publish, Alex felt his heart thump. The plane had just reached 10,000 feet. He activated the high-speed Wi-Fi, the $40 charge stabbing his soul, but he knew it was worth it. The post went live at 5:17 in the afternoon, and it took only 43 seconds to explode. His phone vibrated without pause. Ping, 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 ping. The view count jumped like a hacked metric: 18,000, 32,000, 87,000, 200,000 in under 10 minutes. Comments flooded in. "No way this is real. Oh my God, this airline is going to change the industry. Who is this CEO? I want to follow him." Alex switched to Twitter. Hashtag Aurora Karma was skyrocketing. Then Elias Warren. Then Platinum Toxic. Even crazier major news outlets began reposting his video. USA Today cited it. Reuters released a quick report. CNBC called it the moment that will reshape aviation. The Washington Post wrote, "CEO confronts discrimination on the spot. A lesson for every corporation." Alex's jaw dropped. Holy, he did not finish, before a flight attendant passed by, smiling because she assumed he was reacting to a game. Meanwhile, back on the ground, Aurora Airlines was experiencing its biggest upheaval in years. The marketing department, moments away from clocking out, saw mentions of Aurora Spike by over 1,200 times in a single hour. People everywhere began searching for information about Elias Warren, the man who used humility to dismantle a toxic structure. On the 47th floor of Aurora headquarters, the after-hours stock graph shot upward, 7.8%, then 9.3%, then 11.5%. The board of directors stared at the screen like they were witnessing a miracle. "Dear God," one member whispered, "we bought a CIO, not an airline." At the same time, in the terminal, passengers from various flights were sharing the video jaws, dropped eyes gleaming with satisfaction. A janitor at Gate 12 watched the clip and burst into tears, not out of sadness, but because someone had finally stood up for people like him. Inside the Aurora Elite Lounge, still heavy with the aftershocks, those who had witnessed the incident exchanged looks filled with emotions they could not fully name. Connor, the young engineer, whispered, This is going to be the ethics lesson of the entire industry." A few meters away, a new employee named Chloe, who had trembled earlier when called to assist and had seen Greg and Linda mistreat customers with her own eyes, watched the video too. She whispered silently, "Thank God I did not join in." She had no idea her future was about to change, but something deep inside told her that something big was coming. The plane shook lightly as a flight attendant pushed the service cart down the aisle, but Alex barely noticed. His inbox was filling with requests from international outlets. Can you send the original file? Can you verify the recording time? Can you share your perspective as a direct witness? Alex laughed aloud, causing the passenger beside him to glance over. I was just trying to go on a business trip," he muttered. Then an email notification slid across his screen. From Orion Capital Communications. Subject, "Thank you." Alex opened it. Inside was a single line. "You helped us say what we could not say ourselves. Thank you for your honesty. No signature, no logo." But Alex knew exactly who sent it. He leaned back in his seat and exhaled. Outside the window, golden clouds stretched endlessly under the deepening sunset, like a silent sea. And as the sunlight brushed across his face, Alex knew one thing with absolute clarity. This story had outgrown a lounge, an airport, even an airline. It had become a symbol, a declaration aimed straight at the face of discrimination. No one stands above justice. No one escapes consequence. And in that moment, the sky was no longer just a place where planes passed through. It became the place where justice rose high enough for millions to see. The door of the small meeting room behind the Aurora Elite Lounge closed behind Elias Warren with a heavy sound like a final period dropped onto the end of a dark chapter in the airline's history. In that instant, the glass walls reflected the faces of 3 people caught between responsibility and consequence. David Cole stood there pale, his tie crooked to one side, his hair disheveled, as if he had sprinted from Manhattan barefoot. Maria Torres remained sharp and composed, holding her tablet against her chest like a sword drawn at the precise moment it was needed. And Elias, though his posture showed fatigue, carried eyes that did not. They were sharp, cold, filled with the resolve of a man who had just witnessed the root of rot he now had no choice but to cut out. "I gave you 6 months," Elias began, his voice low and steady, not loud, yet enough to make the room feel smaller around them. 6 months to fix the culture that has been quietly choking Aurora to death. And what I saw today proves that you have failed completely. David inhaled sharply, struggling not to collapse into the nearest chair. Elias, I do not. Elias cut him off with a single word, one forceful enough to break apart every prepared excuse David had brought with him from the car. I do not want to hear another justification. Today I watched an employee get removed from a first-class seat because of his skin color. I saw a VIP customer use her privilege to humiliate people. I saw a supervisor threaten airport security to expel a passenger who had a valid ticket. And you, the head of company culture, told me everything was improving. David bowed his head, his shoulders trembling. I know I cannot defend it. But Elias, please give me another chance. I will redo everything I will. Elias shook his head, the movement weary, but edged with deep disappointment. Do you know what your problem is, David? It is not lack of competence. It is lack of courage. You prune the rotten branches, but leave the diseased roots untouched. You use training to patch holes, when what I need is a complete reconstruction. Maria opened her tablet, her voice clear as a bell, each sentence falling like a hammer strike on polished tile. The plan you asked us to prepare is complete, Elias. Mandatory 8-hour retraining for all 80,000 employees. Termination of the priority seating privileges program. Review of all complaints from the past 5 years. And implementation of the SHIELD system, allowing employees to refuse service to abusive passengers. Elias nodded. That is only the beginning. David looked up, eyes red. The beginning, Aurora does not need repair. Elias said each word sharp as a blade. It needs rebirth. If I must sacrifice 100 people, I will. If I must sacrifice 1,000, I will. Because I would rather have an airline of 5,000 decent people than one with 80,000 who uphold privilege and discrimination. David swallowed hard, his lips trembling. You are going to replace the entire system. I am going to replace anything that prevents Aurora from becoming an airline. Passengers can trust. The air thickened like dust after an explosion, and David realized he was no longer facing his CEO. He was standing in front of his judgment. But Elias did not finish with anger. He sank into a chair, rubbed his temples, and spoke quietly, laden with bitter truth. David, I didn't buy this airline for fun. I bought it because I knew it could be better. I believed in you. I believed in your team. But today, when I watched Greg, Linda, and Marilyn, I realized what you call progress is nothing but a thin coat of paint over a collapsing house. David stood silently, tears gathering. Give me one more chance, he whispered the plea of a man drowning. Elias looked at him for a long time. One, he said. And it starts now. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Now. David nodded vigorously, like a drowning man grabbing hold of a lifeline. Yes, Elias, I will. I swear. Maria stepped in, her words sharp but fair. And if you fail, you know the consequence. David looked at her, then at Elias, understanding that today's mercy was not forgiveness, but a final rope thrown before the fall. When the meeting ended, Elias stood, put on his jacket, and walked toward the door. But before leaving, he turned back and delivered a sentence that froze the room into absolute silence. If the next time I have to go undercover to inspect my own company's culture, that will be your last day at Aurora. And with that, Elias walked out, leaving behind 2 people, one ready to fight his way back toward redemption, and one prepared to wield the blade that would cut out every infection to save the airline they had nearly lost. The Chicago sky greeted Elias with the pale golden light of early dawn, as if trying to soothe the storm he had just walked through. But the moment his phone regained signal after landing, it began vibrating non-stop like someone shouting into his face that the real battle had only just begun. Dozens of press alerts, hundreds of emails from the board, and an avalanche of messages from friends, partners, and investors all crashed into his screen at once. But Elias did not open a single one. He stared at the display for a few seconds, then slipped the phone back into his pocket. He was exhausted, so exhausted it felt as if his entire body had been cast in lead. But beneath that exhaustion was a rising, glowing certainty, the kind of certainty he had waited a full year to feel. Aurora Airlines was finally starting to fly in the right direction. The black sedan waiting outside the airport carried him through familiar Chicago suburbs, past rows of late autumn trees, shedding their final golden leaves like soft greetings, welcoming a son of the city home after a long battle. When the car stopped in front of the modest two-story wooden house where his family lived, Elias paused at the door for a few seconds, wanting to breathe in the quiet he had not had a single moment to touch throughout the chaos of the past day. The door opened, and there she was. His wife Lauren, her eyes widening in surprise at his unannounced arrival, before softening into the warm smile he had always considered the safest refuge in his life. "Oh my God, Elias." Lauren stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him, holding him as if he had come back from a war. "You are home early." Elias did not answer right away. He held her tighter, letting the warmth of her embrace and the familiarity of her heartbeat silence the noise still clinging to his mind. "Something happened, right?" she asked, her voice gentle but sharp in the way only a woman who had lived beside him long enough to sense the storms behind his silence could be. Elias gave a small nod. "A long day," he said, "but the right thing was finally done." Lauren stepped back, searched his eyes for a moment, then placed her hand on his cheek. "I am proud of you." 4 simple words, yet enough to dissolve every invisible piece of armor Elias had worn through the chaos. When they stepped inside, their 2 children ran toward him, their bright laughter sweeping away the last echoes of the confrontation in New York. Elias lifted his youngest daughter, kissed her forehead, and for the first time that day, he felt himself truly smile. Not the calm, controlled smile he used in front of men who had done wrong. Not the strategic smile he held for the media, but the smile of a man who had come home to what mattered most. That night after dinner, and after the children had gone to their rooms, Elias opened his laptop in his small office, the walls covered in flight path sketches and vintage airplane models. There was an email waiting for him, sent by David Cole at 10:14 the night before. Subject draft of Aurora reconstruction plan. Elias opened the file. He expected to see a few rushed slides, but what appeared made his eyebrows lift. A 30-page plan detailed down to the hour the procedure the personnel changes required. It was written by a different David, not the man who bowed under pressure, not the man who played safe, but a leader who understood he was standing at the edge of his career, and that whether he collapsed or transformed depended entirely on the steps he chose next. Elias read through every section, every action plan, every timeline, and for the first time he felt genuine hope. Not hope for David, but hope for Aurora. When he finished, he typed a brief reply. "A good start. See you Monday." He closed the laptop, leaned back in his chair and gazed out the window at the moonlit yard. It had been a long day, a turbulent day, but it was also a day in which justice not only arrived, it was carried out clearly, firmly, and without compromise. Elias closed his eyes, letting one final deep breath signal the end of the whirlwind. And he told himself, starting tomorrow, Aurora would no longer be an airline built on rotting privilege. It would be the airline of decency, of people treated with respect, of employees who dared to stand up for what was right, even on their first day, like Chloe. Because in the end, justice is not always a loud explosion. Sometimes it is the quiet action of someone powerful enough to change everything. And today, Elias Warren had done exactly that, not through the authority of a CEO, but through the character of a man who believed that everyone deserved to fly beneath the same sky. From the perspective of an expert in corporate culture and power dynamics, the story of Aurora Airlines is not merely an incident inside an airport lounge, it is a testament to an unchanging truth. Power only holds real value when it is used to protect people, not to shield arrogance. An organization does not collapse because of external pressure. It collapses when those in power forget the most basic moral boundaries. Elias Warren did what many leaders avoid. He confronted wrongdoing right at the scene and cut out the rotten roots instead of decorating the surface. That is the essence of true leadership, and it is also a reminder that justice often arrives in a quiet, cold, but absolutely precise form. If you believe that respect must always stand above privilege, then like to help spread this message and subscribe so you do not miss the next story that uncovers the truth. And before leaving the video, drop a short comment with the phrase, "Justice wins," so we can build a community that values ethics and human decency.